Second session of webinars by YFEED, this one called Sustaining the Economy, Public Health and Environment for the Future of Humanity. We were just waiting a couple of minutes for everyone to sign up. I'll hand it over to IS. IS, can you check if all the speakers are here? If yes, then we can begin with the webinar.
Hello, everybody. I can see Dr. Vishwanath Pandit. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. I can see Dr. Obed Remains as well, and Miss Michael Newman. And I'm having difficulty to track Mr. Raja Devas's voice, sir. Sir, can you hear me? Miss Peter, I'm having trouble getting Raja Devas's voice, sir. I think I'm gonna go ahead to like get info from him. You guys keep talking. I'll be back with more information.
Okay, sure. Let's wait another minute, and if not, we'll begin, and then you can let me know when he's in. IS, do you think it's okay if we begin with the panel, or should we wait for a few minutes? IS, can you hear me?
Hi, I'm sorry. I was like talking with Krishna. Okay, I think we're gonna have to start our session.
We start the program. I think Raja Devasys Roy, he will join us in a bit. He is logging in, so we can have other speakers speaking or conduct our program, and he will join in a while for us.
Sure, perfect. Okay, so once again, welcome everyone for this webinar session titled Sustaining Economy, Public Health and Environment for the Future of Humanity. This has been part 2 of a series of webinars conducted by the YFEED. We have an exciting panel today, all experts in their own field, and I can't wait to begin the discussion. I'll hand it over to IS to have the welcome and highlights, after which we'll take a screenshot, a group photo, so that request everyone to put on their cameras after IS is done with his welcome. Thank you, and over to you, IS.
Hello everyone, can you guys hear me properly? Let me set up my slide first, and then we can start from there. Okay.
IS, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Should I? मेरो आवाज चाहिँ आएन भन्छ त. Hello, can you hear me? Wait, आवाज आएन भनेको छ.
Yes, we can.
Miss Hita, can you hear me? Oh, really? So she said she couldn't hear first, so.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Ayaz, can you hear us?
Hello, everyone. I would like to formally welcome you to our second installation of our youth webinar, Sustaining Economy, Public Health, Environment for the Future of Humanity. And this is the second installation of Expert Youth Interaction session. So today's webinar is a joint initiative and co-organized by Youth for Environment, Education and Development Foundation and United Nations Initiative for Children and Youth, UNMDCY. So talking about Fruitful Foundation.
You can check on IS.
Sorry. I think Hida is having trouble getting me, but I think other people are getting me. So, Mr. Krishna, can you check on that, please? I think I'm going to go with presentation now.
Am I audible?
Talking about Fruitful Foundation.
Okay.
Talking about Fruitful Foundation, it is a youth-led non-profit, non-governmental organization. It was formally established in 1980 with the aim to specialize in environmental protection, quality education, and chasing the sustainable development goals. This organization also has revered interests in serious disciplines such as women empowerment, gender neutrality, and human rights. We do like to specialize ourselves in youth empowerment through social entrepreneurship, trainings, and workshops as well. And talking about today's presenter, we have very distinguished guests from all parts of the world who are doing very best on their own. At first, we have Mr. Raza Devasis Roy Wanga, who is a Chokma King, Chief of the Chokma Circle, former Minister of State, Ministry of Environment and Forest, Bangladesh. He will be talking about community empowerment and COVID-19 crisis as well. And another speaker, we have Dr. Christian Hunda, who is the Director of Regional Project Energy Security and Climate Change Asia Pacific Recap, Konrad Adenauer, Stiftung Hong Kong Asia via China, who will be talking about green economy in correlation with COVID-19 crisis. We have Dr. Nishal Nath Pandey, who is who is Director of Center for South Asian Studies, CSAS, from
Kathmandu,
Nepal.
With the audio for IS because it worked all this while, but there's something wrong now.
You are hearing me correctly, right? Peter? Krishna, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Ayaz.
Krishna? So I'm not sure if I have to go on with presentation or like check in with Hita.
Oh, like we can hear you.
Keep it for now. We can come back to IS when his microphone and when the technical issues get better.
Oh. Come again, please, Mr. Krishna.
We'll do a quick round of introductions for our speakers. We have a great panel here. And while we still wait, I think we can get started with a round of introductions. So today we have with us, first we have Dr. Christian Hubner. Dr. Hubner is the head of the regional project Energy, Security and Climate Change in Asia Pacific of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, based at Hong Kong and China. His thematic priorities are the national and international analysis of the German energy transition, the geopolitics of energy security, and the economic evaluation of climate policy instruments. Prior to this position, he has worked as coordinator for environmental, climate and energy policy within the KAS's Department of European and International Cooperation in Berlin. 3 years before joining the foundation, Dr. Hubner was a research associate at a research institute of the Leibniz Association. There, as a trained economist, his focus has been on environmental economic analysis of ecosystems. Next we have with us Dr. Nishal Nath Pandey. Dr. Pandey is the director of the Center for South Asian Studies, an autonomous think tank of Nepal, and a well-known academic. He was executive director of the Institute for Foreign Affairs under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from 1998 to 2006. He is a PhD in political science from Tribhuvan University in Kathmandu. He was also the advisor to the National Planning Commission for the tourism and civil aviation sectors from 96 to 97. He was a task force member to draft the ninth five-year plan of the Nepal government. Currently, Dr. Pandey was also an expert at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Nepal in 2016. He was appointed member of the High-Level Task Force on Foreign Policy in 2017. Dr. Pandey teaches at the Armed Forces Force Command and Staff College, Naxal, Kathmandu. His comments and interviews are regularly published in international magazines and telecast in TV channels. We then have with her Dr. Abhay Sagar Mins. Dr. Abhay Sagar Mins is an associate professor of anthropology at the Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee University, Ranchi in India. He has done his MSc in anthropology from University of Delhi and his doctoral degree from Ranchi University. Currently, he is a board member of various international and national organizations. His area of specialization is on tribal studies. He still continues his social activism, which started during his youth days while studying in Delhi University. He has represented the tribals of India in many of international and national meets. He is closely involved with grassroots and spends much of his time carrying out research-based trials of tribal studies, of tribal issues. We have with us Ms. Mai Thin Yu Moon. She is a young Indigenous rights advocate from the Chin community in Myanmar. She is the program director of the Indigenous Peoples Development Program of Chin Human Rights Organization. She is representing Indigenous youths to the Executive Council of Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact. She has also served as an Asia focal point for the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus since 2016. She has been working with Indigenous communities in Myanmar and Asia for the past several years, being a part of strengthening platforms for Indigenous youths and Indigenous women across Asia. In January 2018, she contributed as an expert to the expert group meeting on the sustainable development of Indigenous peoples' land and territories that took place at the UN headquarters, New York, in preparation for the 17th session of the UNPFII. She was awarded Chin Person of the Year by her people in 2019. She has also been recently elected to the steering committee for the Indigenous Peoples Forum at the IFAD. And last but not the least, we have Mr. Raja Devashish Roy Wangsa. Raja Devashish Roy is the current titular Raja or King of the Chamaka Circle in the Chittagong Hill Tracts of Bangladesh since 1977. Mr. Roy is a barrister by profession and has been practicing law in the Dhaka District Court since 1988 and in the Supreme Court of Bangladesh since 1991. He has taught English law to London University LLB students at Bhujan Academy, Dhaka, and constitutional law at Rangmati Law College. He is also a former expert member of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, that's UNPFII, served in position consistently for 2 terms from 2011 to 13 and 2014 to 16. So, welcome everyone. Yes, if you can hear us, the floor is yours. If not, let's begin with the first session.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me, Vita? I think you were having trouble like getting me.
Difficulties. I request each speaker to limit your presentation to roughly about 8 to 10 minutes. Please don't exceed 10 minutes. And the floor is yours. Let's begin with first. Do we have Mr. Raja Devashish Roy in the panel already?
I don't know whether you can see me. I can see some photographs. My camera is probably off. My microphone is on.
Okay, let's begin with Dr. Christian Hubner, who will be talking on green economy and the COVID-19 crisis. Dr. Hubner, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the kind introduction and the kind invitation and the possibility to talk about a very important topic. As you already introduced, my name is Christian Hübner. I'm currently director of the...
Can anyone else hear Dr. Hübner?
Sorry? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay. Yeah. As you already said, my name is Christian Hübner. I'm director of the regional project Energy Security and Climate Change of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation Asia Pacific. I've been invited to talk a bit about green economy and COVID-19. Maybe let me switch a bit the topic to green recovery and COVID-19, because I think that's a more appropriate question in this time. What we face currently around the world as an impact to the COVID-19 pandemic is an economic crisis. Many countries already are still in the lockdown, and first have already left it. My impression into a lockdown than out, and the impacts are crucial to the economy. Have a look, for instance, into the energy disrupting the whole energy market around the world. Prices for gas, oil, coal are decreasing extremely, with a tremendous impact to this industry. But it's not just the fossil fuel industry. The economic crisis and the lockdown especially have crucial impacts to supply chains in the renewable energy sector, for solar panels, for instance, something you can observe especially here in Asia Pacific. Many renewable energy power plants who need solar panels or other utilities currently don't have them. This is a supply chain disruption. That's a big problem. This economic crisis demands, of course, some kind of reaction from governance, and governance are now in a very, very difficult situation. They have to take a decision in these times of economic crisis where many people are losing their jobs. And they have to take this decision in extremely condition, because all these decisions they are taking now on public spending, on prioritizing sectors that need support, has crucial impacts to future generation. So therefore this decision has to be done very smart today, and that is not easy, because this economic situation we face has also political consequences. It changed at all the political environment we know from the last year, where, to my feeling, green elements in the economy had a positive perception in many countries, especially in Asia, for instance, where renewable energy reach out an enormous speed in many countries with global driver like China, for instance. This totally changed up to date. As well in Europe. Europe last year, for instance, was totally the end of last year was totally in the framework of a Green Deal to decarbonize the whole European economy to the future. But that has changed now. A big debate, of course, started. What kind of those Green Deals people are, or the European would like to face, and position has changed. There are a few countries in East Europe, for instance, who said maybe we need to switch our priority under this new global environment. The same, I think, will happen a bit to Asia. We see, of course, a huge rollout of renewable energy in many countries, but at the same time, we may see a big disruption in the fossil fuel industry. I'm not that really optimistic which energy industry, most governments are going to support in the meantime or in the future. They have to take priorities and make a decision. And then there comes along where they see more jobs, which is a crucial driver for a lot of political and governance decision. Here I'm a bit pessimistic for renewable energy in the future. At the same time, we are in the 5th year of the Paris Agreement. Normally this year, the countries should put in some more ambitious NDCs, national determined contribution goals. It's a difficult decision under this global COVID-19 pandemic to put in now a more ambitious climate goals. It's something you have to communicate. That is not so easy in this time. Well, what we see now is as COVID-19 have extreme impacts to the economy. It changed totally the political environment for a green agenda, a green economy, decarbonization targets. But I still believe it makes sense to do or to give public incentive to a green economy or a green recovery. Also, it's difficult to do this kind of decision because all these social aspects of an economy are affected, like jobs, affordable prices for energy, and other essential services people need. But maybe one observation I had so far, which makes me a bit optimistic when it comes to the energy sector, is a field where I am working a lot. When you compare, for instance, the impacts of the pandemic. Sorry? Somebody is. Where all these pandemic shock affecting fossil fuels.
Can I please mute your mics? Can I please request everyone else to mute your mics and only the panelists to speak? Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Where all the pandemic shock is affecting fossil fuels and renewable energy sector at the same time. What makes me a bit optimistic is, but this needs further research, and this is a crucial part to green economy or green recovery. Maybe a renewable energy system a bit more resilient to these kind of economic shocks. Maybe I just can speak in English now. Maybe maybe I come to an end. I just have one further point. My time is running out too. So the resilience of the renewable energy sector is something that needs more research. I'm really optimistic that could be a very good benefit, and that turns out something you can observe, especially in times of crisis. Maybe it's more resilient than fossil fuel energy sector. The other thing is that is a debate that already started in the last years, and that is a deeper look and monitoring to the co-benefits of energy transition policy or climate political agenda setting or climate economy. That's something including social aspects like what kind of jobs can we expect if we use more renewable energy? What kind of jobs we can expect, for instance, if we propose more ambitious climate agenda setting in terms of climate adaptation measures or mitigation measures, which are not just in the field of renewable energy, for instance, or energy sector. That is affecting more parts than just than in the economy. So maybe it makes sense to have a look more to these co-benefits in the green recovery debate. Although I know it's a very, very difficult situation because there are countries which don't have the budgets to do all this investment which are necessary to come out of this lockdown. But I think it's a good time as well to help each other and come out and find a good way for a green recovery. Okay, I make here stop and would like to give it to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yubna. Some very valid points raised. And I apologize, it seems I had all the technical issues all this while. But we have now with us Mr. Rajaroy Devashish, and sir, the floor is yours. Mr. Raja Devashish Roy, the floor is yours now. Okay, let's come back to him. Let's move ahead now. We'll go with Dr. Mr. Nath Pandey, who's going to be speaking on international diplomacy and cooperation during the COVID-19 crisis. Sir? You need to unmute yourself. Your mic is muted.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. After Dr. Hubna has already mentioned about energy transition and the other issues involved, I think I'll just stick to the current economic impact on and also the impact on the SDGs. Well, there is no debate that this is an unprecedented crisis. People are also mentioning about the Great Depression and the similarities it has with the major recessions that we have seen in the past. So I will not go into that. I think the impact will be foremost on employment, second on the overall tourism industry of the entire world, on trade, also on the issue of transit. Dr. Hubna has already mentioned about decreasing gas and petrol prices, which is also going to have an impact on revenue and so forth. But if this is going to be another Great Depression, if this is going to be a repeat of a major economic recession, then foremost the problem will be on poverty alleviation. That's going to be certain because there are going to be layoffs, as we already see in the United States. It's a major issue of unemployment. People are asking for unemployment benefits. And then we'll also see the impact on the SDGs. So SDGs, number one, eliminate poverty. I think foremost, it will be an adverse impact on SDG 1. On erasing hunger, there will be an impact there. Reducing inequality, improving clean water and sanitation, and providing quality education. I think we are going to see direct impact on those areas of the SDGs. On quality education, a lot of schools and colleges are now going for online tuition and online classes, but that is hardly going to cover the entire population, as we see in Nepal, which is a rural area where not everybody has access to the internet. So how are young people, students, going to study who do not have a reliable internet facility? So although the people in the cities, the students may have internet facility, but those in the rural areas are not going to have. So therefore, there is no alternate to formal traditional classrooms, although we are promoting online classes as well. And there is going to be the greatest impact also on public health, because here we saw that we were in lack of hand sanitizers, face masks, ventilators, and these basic equipment, PPEs. The government will have to invest more on these health, on these equipment that is required for countering the pandemic, for helping the people cope up with the pandemic. So therefore, most important is going to be how long is this lockdown going to be, number one. Number two, if it is going to go on for an extended period of time, there is also going to be macroeconomic adjustments that needs to be done by the government. We have already seen in the other areas of SAARC, other countries of SAARC, primarily in India, where a large economic financial stimulus plan has been announced by the finance minister just yesterday. In Pakistan also, they have asked the IMF for loans and so forth. Other countries are also trying to do the same. But I think the overall impact on the SDGs will be major impacts. And if we are going to be hit very hardly with the employment, then the people will have to really see how their monthly income is going to be adjusted with this economic slowdown. As far as Nepal is concerned, we are going to see a decline in remittance. We have already seen a decline percentage this month on remittance coming from outside, as Nepalese are working in large numbers in the Gulf and in Malaysia and South Korea. There is lesser demand now in the Gulf, and the Gulf countries, especially United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, they are even asking the migrant laborers to go back home. And here we are in a lockdown situation. So Kuwait has also said that they will arrange a special flight for the migrant workers to return home. But how are we going to cope with this en masse return of migrant workers back home? Because where are we going to keep them? We don't have this adequate quarantine facility. And we are talking about a very large number, about 4 million. So if they come together, back home, then what are they going to do? How are we going to give them employment? So each time we have seen that major pandemic situations has also contributed to political upheavals, to social disturbances. And this is what I think the government is clearly trying to avoid. But if we have to see really on how we try and get over this, because some of these Gulf countries are already sending the migrant laborers back home. And we also have an open border with India, and these Nepalese migrant workers living and working in India are already coming to the border and trying to come back home, which the government of Nepal is trying to stop. But how long can we stop our own citizens from coming back home? If they do return, there could be a surge or a spike in the total number of those affected by the virus. We could even see social disturbances, as we saw yesterday, because forcibly they are trying to come inside the country. So there are going to be a lot of repercussions, not only for the economy, but also for social stability and for politics, because we are fragile democracies in South Asia, and any kind of a major economic recession will have a direct consequence on governance issues as well. So I think we are trying to have a concept of a shared responsibility of bold stimulus packages, but the government itself needs to have revenue for those kind of stimulus packages. On March 31st, the United Nations Secretary General announced the establishment of COVID-19 Response and Recovery Fund. I think that needs to be sent to the developing countries more than the developed countries, and the UNDPs and other UN specialized agencies also need to make sure that the governments of South Asia, the developing countries, get it sooner rather than later. So I think I will stop here. More or less, this is the entire canvas of the challenges that we have to operate on. But I think the government desperately needs public-private partnership. I think it needs support from NGOs and INGOs. This is not the time to control INGOs and control and restrict NGOs in their operations. I think government has to be more open-hearted to accept support, financial support, logistics support in this hour of grave crisis. But as humanity has faced this many times before, we have always come out stronger. And I'm sure, I'm really optimistic about this, that we will come out stronger at the end. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. And as you rightly said, there has to be international cooperation, and there has to be cooperation between civil society and the government to come out of this crisis. So thank you for putting those points out. We then have Dr. Abhay Mins talking about the holistic overview of the current global pandemic. Sir, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Hida Lakhani. I must say you are a wonderful moderator, and appreciation for the learned speakers for today. I'm Abhay Mins. Dear friends, first of all, salutations from my tribal land of Jharkhand, and a very good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I would like to express my deep sense of gratitude to the Executive Director of WIPED Nepal, Mr. Anish Shrestha, and his team for organizing this webinar. I also welcome and thank the co-organizers, UN Major Group for Children and Youth, the Network, International Youth Forum, Global Indian Youth Caucus, Sustainable Development Council, JETPA, IYNI, National Council of India. Today's global pandemic is just like a scary science fiction movie, which depicts biological warfare, but unfortunately, this is real, my friend. In my discussion, I'll be largely focusing on behavioral challenges concerning fake news and its implications, citing some empirical evidences from India and elsewhere. Though I must clarify at this point that due to lockdown, there is very little research-based published material on this. My presentation is based on secondary sources, and the part is based on regular interaction and feedback from the youth networks in India and abroad. The outbreaks in the form of plagues have affected the human history since time immemorial. Many great ancient civilizations have perished, and the impact and magnitude of these pandemics in the past are difficult to comprehend until we are witnessing it for ourselves. Be it the Black Death or the bubonic plague of the 14th century, where almost half the population of Europe was wiped out or the plague that hit us in India in 1897, or that of 1918, or to talk of the recent outbreaks of SARS, H1N1, flu, or swine flu, or H5N1, or avian flu, or Ebola, etc. It has always shaped a new course for the humankind. The World Health Organization and the leading research institutes of the world have shared and still continue to disseminate the information that would mitigate the spread of COVID-19. But staying at home is a challenge for the homeless. What about the migrant laborers, economically weaker sections, daily wages, etc.? The regular hand washing is also a big challenge in regions facing severe water crisis. Majority of the world population usually escape buying expensive health insurances, and this makes them more vulnerable due to ignorant and ostrich effect. This has largely to do with optimism bias, wherein an individual thinks something bad cannot happen to him or her. Social distancing is another method to mitigate the spread of the virus. But frankly speaking, being a social scientist, the more appropriate term should be physical distancing, because you are still socially connected, even being physically separated. And this webinar is a perfect example to comprehend it. Most of the countries have wasted precious times after the first cases appeared in the region. The lockdown measures have been very expensive affair for the countries, and it has badly hit the economies globally, as what Dr. Pandey has referred in his previous intervention. Majority of the fund with the government have been now used to respond to the immediate needs of the people. Due to time constraints, I'll be talking about one major social issue, and that is fake news and its impact. One of the major concerns for the administration and the political leaders across the globe is countering the propagation of false news or fake news. World Health Organization, in one of its statements, has rightly said that on one hand, the human population is confronting COVID-19 pandemic, and with this, the another situation is getting more complex with the issue of infodemics. And the infodemics is spread of hatred, misinformation, violence, discrimination, prejudices with the propagation of fake news. We can clearly see that the social and cultural influences of human behavior because of the impact of COVID-19. Historically speaking, we have data and evidences from the past where majority of pandemics lead to violence, discrimination, and also stigmatizing a certain group which are likely to be underprivileged or they may belong to a minority group or a particular ethnic stock. People belonging to these groups are more likely to be skeptical about the public health information they receive. They might be less willing to adopt recommendations and be more susceptible to fake news. We have already witnessed a large number of conspiracy theories, misinformation, and also the media is projecting as if this is the end of the world. We also know that this kind of environment actually has worst implications and impacts, as there is large number of prejudiced population and political hijacking of the issue. The fake news or information is highly fatal, as evident from the past researches, and it has greatly fueled the hostility towards another group. Of the recent example which I would like to cite in the discourse from India, there was a conference by Muslims in Delhi. The gathering was there was huge uproar both from political angle and from the media houses. When we critically examine it, we observe that there was another thousands of similar meetings going on elsewhere at the same time throughout the country. Hence, in this case, it would be highly incorrect to say that a certain group of minorities are responsible for the spread of virus alone. We already have reports through credible sources about the physical attacks and humiliation of ethnic Asian people who are now predominantly located in Western countries. They are most of the time labeled as someone who is carrying the Wuhan or the Chinese virus. Despite the entire world facing the same issue, we can see large number of segregation among different ethnic population, among different countries, among different regions. We as youth have to be open-minded and refrain from supporting this kind of ideas. There is a very simple method of verifying fake news. In social science or behavioral science, whenever we receive some kind of information on stimulus, it is not in the form of a single fact, but it is a group of facts. For today's youth, who are highly techno-savvy and the world of information is disposed on the fingertips, It is highly obligatory and expected out of them that they mitigate these fake news. The bundle of facts can be verified from various credible sources. It can be easily done. Taking an example for the same minority gathering in Delhi, it had all sorts of fake news attached to it, and one of them was that meeting was called. The truth was that the meeting was held way ahead from the date of lockdown, and hence the chances of warning cannot hold true in this case. All the information could be fragmented to pieces, and each pieces could be cross-verified or cross-checked through various means. Researchers have proved that the youth and religious leaders have proved to be one of the most reliable sources of dissemination of information, as it involves the power of word of mouth. And this credibility is even more than the government. The coordinated efforts of the youth can be an important step to mitigate fake news. Being an anthropologist, I would also like to share reasons for social discrimination and ethnic violence, especially with regard to the current pandemic. Whenever a minority group or ethnic group is branded negatively, this is because of two factors. One is the innate nature of human being of being prejudiced of the others, the other people, the other country, the other community. And the second factor is the already existing context or influence or experience of the past crisis. Usually it's like they are like that. We need to understand why people do what they do. It is usually because of the circumstance that compels them to do it. And empirical evidence from India is that during the lockdown, the migrants or the people were physically dead by the police. Majority sitting at home were like, why can't they stay home and be safe and make others safe? But for us as youth, we need to understand that if people are moving around, risking their lives, then it has to be for some good reasons. This has been already discussed by Dr. Pandit, so I won't be repeating it. In fact, we would look back and question ourselves how we have not made it possible for them to actually stay where they are. In a way, it is our failure. One of the strategies in the lockdown should have been allowing the migrants to move in phase-wise from one state to another instead of sudden and complete locking of movement. The best place for an individual is their home. We all know it. Before I conclude, one thing which has been hovering around my thought is discussing a hypothetical situation. What if there was no pandemic around and the challenges of climate change, poverty, cutthroat economic competition, violence, discrimination, and other global issues would have been dealt by the government around the world with the same concern and vigor that they have been doing with the current global pandemic? I think we have a fair chance of sustainable development for the coming centuries if all these issues are dealt in the same manner they have been doing it with COVID-19. In my concluding remarks, makeup of this virus also coded to destroy our staunch egos, strong exclusive development, greedy economy, individualism, and selfishness. Are we prepared for some other kind of viruses even more fatal than the COVID-19? The humankind as a whole has to change the perception it has about this materialistic world. And only when inclusive development and growth is envisioned for the entire human race, considering the Indian philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means the whole world is one family. Until then, we will be at risk for decades to come. Thank you for your attention and time. Johar and good evening. Over to you, Ms. Lakhani.
Thank you, Mr. Mintz. As you've truly said, we do need to reflect and think about where we are heading as a human system. Finally, our final speaker for this section is Mr. Raja Devashish Roy Vangza. Sir, over to you. He's going to be speaking about community empowerment for fighting the COVID-19 crisis. Mr. Vangza, are you here? Are you still with us? Mr. I.S. Kulal Magar, can you check if Mr. Wanza is still here. So the floor is yours if you're here. If you're speaking, you might need to unmute your mic because we can't hear you at the moment. While we wait, he is here, but it seems we were unable to hear his voice. While we wait for that, I request everyone to please put on your camera so that we can take a group selfie. Ayush, the floor is yours to lead this section. Go ahead.
I think we're having trouble getting Mr. Raza Devas's way, and I think he's here, but we cannot hear him. I think there's some technical issues back to his end. So while we are dealing with it, I think we need to get on and take a group screenshot. So please turn on your webcam for a moment. Yeah. Please, everyone, cooperate and help me with it. I would like to request my friends to take group screenshot. Hello, everybody. Please turn your web camera for a moment. It's lovely to see all of the cheerful faces here. Okay, Mr. Krishna, can you do the screenshot process? Yeah, okay, so maybe let's do some hand gestures of maybe love. I don't know, something. Do something, let's make it cheerful, yeah. Make a love sign, everybody. Yeah, if you can hear me, yeah, just do something, just make it lively, okay? Just help me with the process. Yeah, it's for endurance and like for, yeah, a little bit of hope, yeah. Mr. Krishna, are you taking the screenshot? Okay. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for helping me with the screenshot process. And I hope that you're going to have a great question and answer session now. We are still trying to get Mr. Raza here. I'm sorry for that. I mean, sometimes we have technical issues. What can we do?
While we wait for him, I'd request everyone, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Now is your time to ask away. The speakers are here to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we can take them after this. Okay, we have one question so far. I know actually some of the speakers have already mentioned, we've spoken about the economic impacts of Karuna, but the question is, how do you mitigate the effect of Karuna in the economy? Yes, Mr. Mintz, go ahead.
I don't know if this question I think should be posed to Dr. Pandya, but I also have some certain ideas which I would like to share. Regarding the economy and Corona, yes, the global economy is definitely under a crisis, but in this under this pandemic, I think what we need to focus is to developing more of the microeconomy, the microfinance system, or even at the village level or the local level. It's a good time because, majority of the countries are facing lockdown. So this is a good time. If there is something which is some certain districts are opened up, certain districts or certain regions are opened up, it's good that the government should come and with the help of other civil society organization, and they can promote for new innovative ideas, which was not possible at one point of time, but now it is quite possible. Given the examples that the majority of these economies are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So most of the time there has been a complaint whenever the certain multinational companies encroach a country or a region. It's always people are skeptical whether the local traders or local economy would be badly hit. So this is the time, I think, since the majority of the World Health Organizations, they have already declared that we have to learn to live with this coronavirus. We shouldn't expect that it's going around next month, in a couple of months or a couple of years. So it's better that we all get adapted to it and yes, develop the local economies. And it's a great time for the local farmers and others to grow. I don't know if I was able to answer correctly, but yes, if Dr. Pandey would like to add something more to it. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a question specifically to Dr. Huebner. What sectors must we prioritize in order to create an economical sustainability? And how shall we keep up with production?
Can you repeat the first part?
Sure.
Please.
The question is, what sectors must we prioritize in order to create economic stability? And how shall we keep up with production?
Yeah, that's comes a bit to the first question, how to avoid major impacts like we face currently due to the pandemic. Maybe the word we were finding a need here is resilient. We need a resilient economy, which is able to work with these kind of pandemic shocks. Resilience can happen in certain areas. Mr. Awai means mentioned the micro sector, local community sector. It's very important for this. Being able to work as well at the local level and fight what they can do in terms of economic institution, being able to react, having the competence and responsibility to react at this local level. That's important. Which sector, that is really a question, depends actually to the countries. What are the major economic sectors are providing prosperity to each country and how to protect them from economic shocks like this one. What I believe is currently, and that is a debate that is going on in many expert think tank circles, is how trade patterns will look like in the future, because we saw a huge supply chain disruption during the lockdowns, and it's still holding on because not everybody at the same time get out of the lockdown. And I'm pretty sure there will be a rethinking in many countries of which sectors countries don't want to be dependent from other countries. Maybe the medical sector, for instance, could be one of these. But that could, of course, mean that you lose some economic benefit in these terms. In terms of energy, it's a very crucial and difficult discussion, because then we face a point with Nisha already mentioned, the sector of employment and labor market. For instance, the fossil fuel sector, still a lot of people working in the sector, and now it's facing a major crisis. The price is almost was running meanwhile to the zero. Pretty sure the energy industry, the fossil energy industry, especially those who are 100% private, facing huge crisis now. And a lot of governments need to buy them and to help them with subsidies or other measures. So the question here is how we can do this for the renewable sector, and which seems to me a bit more resilient to pandemic shocks in the future. Then we come back to what I said when we started a bit, looking to co-benefits of renewable energies. How can they be designed? How can they be constructed? Which institution, governance institution do we need for them, and looking out for this co-benefit in this field. That is very important for me. But I think it's almost impossible to say which sector needs major priority, because that is really a specific thing to each country, and they have to decide by their own where they would like to set a certain priority. And I think this pandemic is something unique. It's something. It's crazy at the end. It's crazy what we face currently around the world. I haven't imagined December last year what we are looking where we are now this time. We are going into a future which is quite uncertain in economic terms, and it's difficult to say this is right, this is wrong, because nobody really knows what comes next. We have some experience. We can set incentives. We can maybe set incentive for green recovery. We have to set priorities, but it's really difficult to say what is the right direction now, because it's a unique thing we face currently.
Thank you. I have one question to Mr. Nishchal. What could be the role of Nepalese youth and the government to overcome this economic recession, and how local government can create employment for those returned from foreign countries back to Nepal? So your microphone is muted. So your microphone is still muted. Yes.
Yeah, it's okay. The sectors that are actually going to benefit out of this pandemic situation is going to be pharmaceuticals. And a lot of people have already started writing on that, because pharmaceuticals and these garment factories that produce these PPEs, they are going to largely benefit. But mainly also online businesses and companies will need, or SMEs companies will need to really rethink about their whole strategy of and their own structures within the company of how to go more and more online, because the social distancing perhaps is going to remain for some time. So I think the marketing strategy will have to be different as in the previous time, because this is going to really change the way we do business in the coming days. There's also going to be a greater demand for home delivery, as we have seen in China and other places. Home delivery of food, of restaurant food, of even grocery items, everything will have to go online. And these are sectors which are going to really benefit out of this virus. But I'm really optimistic in one fact, that nothing really has collapsed. It is not a big earthquake or a tsunami or a hurricane. Nothing has collapsed here. The moment we go for the lockdown is over and we go back to our offices or go back to our businesses, I think the structures are there, the banks are there, the insurance companies are there, everything is in place. Nothing has really collapsed. The only problem is this lockdown, and once we are able to ease the lockdown, I think the economy will start to resurrect itself gradually. Of course, 2020 will be largely affected, but then the consequences later will be eased out, as we see, as we saw in many places where lockdown has eased and businesses has really come down, as we saw in some certain places of India. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but we saw some television footage that as the lockdown was eased, there were people in queues and queues trying to buy alcoholic beverage from shops, from liquor shops. So therefore, I think the demand is already there for everything. All you need to do is open the lockdown. And on the specific question about Nepali youth, I think well, we are going to have a macroeconomic situation where the government itself is going to have a hard time getting revenue, because the tax receipt for this quarter is pretty bad, and the Nepalese migrant workers are most likely going to return en masse, and it's not easy to give them employment. It's very easy to say that we'll set up industries and they'll go back to agriculture and so many things, that they'll start opening small businesses. It's not going to be easy. It's a difficult proposition to give employment to such a large number, And if there was employment back home, why would they even go to the Gulf countries for work at the first place? So it is not going to be an easy task. I think we have to control expenditure. We have to control unnecessary government expenditure, and we'll have to see how we can really utilize this manpower, young, able manpower that is going to come back home. I think that is going to be a priority. But as I mentioned earlier, this is really a challenge because many times economic vulnerability and instability has given rise to political problems. So the youth returning back home is a very, very dangerous situation for law and order point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a lot of questions pouring in now, and we're running out of time. So quickly, Mr. Mins, we have 3 questions for you. I'm just going to read them out. The first one says, can we imagine for a while that Karuna is just fruitful result of exploitation of nature and environment? The second one says, in the light of declaration of economic packages by the government and mass migration to villages from farms, how does the economic package make meaning? And the third one is, can we depend on digitization and online platforms like B2B and B2C to help keeping up with economic balance and sustainability?
Okay, first one is like, is there a correlation with the environment degradation and COVID? See, the researchers show there's no clear-cut correlation between something which has come up like COVID-19 and the environmental degradation. But yes, it has been also ascertained that the coronavirus cannot sustain in areas where there is high temperatures. So I don't think there is a clear-cut relation that, yeah, but many of the philosophical understanding goes like, yes, what we do to Mother Nature, she retreats and gives us back. This could be one of the explanations. Second is regarding the economy and the package down. See, my understanding is it's not only about cash or helping people with economy. There are other things which are associated with this kind of pandemics or serious issues. Like there is psychological fear, there is trauma, there is fear of what happens if I get infected with corona, the fear of being left out. We have seen various examples, evidences from Europe and Italy and Iran, where a person or mother who got sick was left down to, or shifted to hospital. She was left out there. She died there, and even the family was not able to go and attend the funeral. So when it comes to economy, I think it's not only the economy, the packages which the government is offering. The government has to come with a holistic perspective. Yes, this package is going to help, no doubt, because this is a time where people are looking for the food supplies or the minimal requirements. So this package is definitely going to help. But my understanding is, apart from this economic help, the government should also look into other aspects, which is going to be very crucial to combat COVID-19. Hita, I don't know, I forgot the third one.
So the third question is, can we depend on digitization and online platforms, so B2B and B2C, to help keep up with economic balance and sustainability?
I'm sorry, I won't be able to answer this question because the clarity I'm just facing. Can you depend this? Ashish, if you're there, can you explain your question? Ashish Adhikari.
Yes, sir. Hello, sir. How are you? My name is Ashish Adhikari, and I am a country director of BLI Nepal. And my question to Abhay sir is, how can we depend on B2B and B2C platforms? Like we can do the productions, and to that production we can sell those things through the online platforms or not? Like by prioritizing the sectors of food and health services, medicines, because these are the basic key factors that must be taken care of at this this pandemic situation. So and also to keep up with the economical stability, this might help. So that is my question. Can we collaborate with the private sector, industries, and government and NGOs, and we can plan something out and do something by socially marketing and making strategies and delivering the products to the house of the people. That's my question.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you so much. I think you missed what Dr. Pandey has already said. There would be a quick grow. The graph would go quite high when it comes to online marketing. And I think you have an opportunity if your product is sellable and if you collaborate, because even if you talk about the multinational companies' online website, they are open to all kinds of products. So I think it would be, but then the transportation of those products could be a challenge. This might differ from country to country. So yes, the local products growth, I think, according to my vision, it has fair chance. And I think if people this is what our Prime Minister also said, the concept of being self-dependent, the Atmanirbhar, that is the Hindi term. And the basic focus is upon how you can, since he also understands the things moving to Delhi, to some other parts of India is going to be a challenge. Because, this contamination is, it's almost impossible to trace until 14 days have passed. So definitely I see there is growth. And I would like to add on what Dr. Pandey has already said about the legal part. It's not about defending my country, but when we study economics, the larger part of the revenue which the state generates is through the GST, the taxation system. Second is through fuel, and third is from liquor. So the liquor was, because the fuel couldn't have been opened up for the people to move around. Liquor was one of the fair stake where the government could have. They increased the excise to 70%. So the liquor which was of 1,000 INR or USD was sold for 1,700 USD. So this was one of the strategy, and I'll tell you, there are empirical evidence that there are reports where one of the state they made 400 crores, that is almost more than 10 million in one day sale. So this is one of the information which I'd like to share. I think, Ashish, I was able to answer your previous question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we have about 20 minutes left. I would suggest that I have the questions noted. We'll take them in the next round and we move ahead. But before we do, I just want to check one last time if Mr. Raja is here and whether he can still speak, or I hope the technical issues have been able to get resolved. If not, we'll move ahead to the next bit. We have Ms. Mai Thinyumon, who will be talking about synthesis and call for actions. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me clear?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. So thank you very much. Such a great moderation. And thank you to thanks go to YFIT for coordinating such a great session with all the experts that we heard. Congratulations also for the session, because we have got quite a number of perspectives and very rich discussions throughout the session. The session touched quite a number of important points, starting from the challenges that we are facing in different fields, starting from the economy, the global economy, and including the energy sector, down to the economic recessions that the challenges that communities are facing. So we touched the sessions, the speakers touched different.
Just interfering to ask if you can hear me. I'm testing my microphone. Sorry.
Yes,
Okay.
we can hear you, sir. Perfect.
Good. Please go ahead. Sorry, I apologize. I have switched to my cell phone from my laptop. Please go ahead.
Maybe
Okay,
Raja, maybe we want you to go first, if the moderator allows.
I think, ma'am, you can finish yours and then we'll take Mr. Raja.
Okay.
So we're not interrupting you.
Right. It's really interesting because these different experts, like Dr. Christian and Dr. Nishal, touched so many issues when it comes to economy. And the different actions that different actors need to take. So, for example, we touched issues on employment and how this COVID-19, the pandemic, will have a great big impact on the SDG. And we touched upon the discussions about the migrant workers, the returning from different countries, and the social disturbances and the possible political disturbances that these actions can bring. And Dr. Abhay also talked about a lot about mainly on social issues that different communities are facing. So we have seen like it's mainly been the pandemic. It has it's not only like about the disease itself, the pandemic itself, but it's also about the infodemics and the different impacts that this has caused on different actors. For example, Dr. Arpe highlighted a lot about the different communities are facing, especially minorities, when it comes to stigmatizing minority groups and the racial discriminations that different groups are facing. When we talk about all these challenges, we have also they have also touched a lot about the actions that need to be taken. The first one hello, is it okay?
Yes, go ahead.
There was a clear thought that there needs to be a strong public-private partnerships. And what we are seeing in the world is also the different states and governments trying to control the movement of these CSOs and the strengthening the activities of the role of civil society organizations and community-based organizations. But the pandemic has highlighted that we need a stronger cooperation and partnership between different actors, not only among the different government departments, but also between government departments and all the NGOs, INGOs, CSOs. So we need to give bigger role to the NGOs and CSOs who are active on the ground, who are really taking the front line in fighting against the pandemic. So another important actor that we highlighted, also through different questions that were raised, is the role of youths. So Dr. Arpe also highlighted a lot on the role of youths that can serve not only to mitigate the infodemic and to stop these fake news and hate speech spreading, but also to elevate the effects, the good results that we can gain from by using media, social media, and information technology that we have. And youth can also take a big role in mediating in these kind of social issues. So another important point is that that was pointed out by Dr. Nishal, was that nothing has really collapsed. So it's really important that it's really important that, and it's a very important time for rethinking about how to construct this resilient economy, and how to how should we say, how to maximize the role of the rural communities and the development gaps that and how to minimize the development gaps that the recent decades have seen. yeah, even though there are so many issues and bad impacts, severe impacts that the pandemic has brought, we still have the silver lining, and there are many actions that different actors can take. And here we have youths, also we have this technology, and yeah, we can overcome this pandemic, bringing and rethinking, restructuring the global, the way that people are living, and the way how we interact with the mother nature, mother earth. So yeah, I will stop here. Yeah, thank you very much for the very insightful discussions from our presenters and also from the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, before we move to the next round of short questions, we'll take a couple of questions after. But before that, we have Mr. Raja Devashish Roy. Sir, the floor is yours. Mr. Roy?
Hello?
Yes.
Ju, I'm not used to holding the phones. I'm more used to laptop. Apologies. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I wish to start off by discussing opportunities rather than challenges, and then move on to the question of challenges, and then the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and Human Rights, and the SDGs. And kindly, if you, Ms. Moderator, if you will just tell me when I'm running out of time that I have at least 30 seconds or 1 minute to wrap up. Okay, I start off with strengths and opportunities. I think, and I would like to speak from the perspective of indigenous peoples, traditions, culture, rights. And I think in the case of things like quarantine, in the case of like building strong partnerships, collective rights of communities, I think indigenous peoples have certain advantages, which is being demonstrated during this pandemic. For example, we have a collective rights tradition. So if somebody is afflicted with the virus, in fact, somebody has been, one of my cousin's daughter-in-law living only 300 meters away. So now the entire community has come forward to say that we will give you food, we will supply the food, you guys don't have to cook, and we will shop for you and all that. And that goes back to the tradition which in my people, Chakma people, we call Malaya, which is that everybody must come forth in times of emergency to support a weaker individual in the family. Then we have a very long tradition of quarantine. In fact, I mean, there are things like somebody dies in the hospital, in the old days, you couldn't bring the body to the village without the chief's permission, but you had to take it straight to the cremation ground. Now, so we understand quarantine. So, and actually we are, I think, doing reasonably well. I live in a community, I live on an island. We have no cars. We have 4,000 people. In the last 2 days, we did lockdown for absolute lockdown, even between the hamlets within our village. Say we had 6 hamlets. We had only 5 or 6 violations out of 4,000 people living. Of course, it's hardship for the wage laborers and the fishermen, people who work outside who weren't allowed to go. So some of the small traders still violated, but it was only 3 or 4 of them who went to the bigger market to bring rice and lentils and whatnot and oil to serve our community so that we can buy it on our island and do not have to take a boat or a bus or a scooter, 3-wheeler to go and do that. That cuts down the risk of coronavirus affliction, etc. Now, let me move on from opportunities and challenge. What did I say? Strengths of indigenous peoples to challenges. Now, actually, I must give kudos to our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. I think she has her heart in the right place and is trying to serve everybody. For example, with food aid, I have heard of one helicopter rice delivery exercise by Army, Air Force, I do not know whoever, but government. But with even the best of intentions of our Prime Minister, and we are monitoring, and we will send you, some of our friends, if you're interested, a form where we are gathering data on exclusion, total exclusion from relief, or moderate exclusion, and the other extreme is some people getting too much. Some people are getting 8 times relief. There are villages which didn't get even 1 time relief. And there are remote communities where you have money. One headman told us a week ago that he wanted to buy rice at, in US dollar terms, something like nearly $1 a kilo, which is way higher than market price. He couldn't get it because of the pandemic, the lockdown, the cars and the boats had not gone. But that situation has changed. So now we are looking at things like remote communities, semi-remote communities, peri-urban communities to look at. I don't know, I can't see. Am I still on? Can you still hear and see me? At least hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I'm going. Oh, that's my little boy. Okay. Okay. My eldest son, by the way, is 30 plus, and he's going to get married. That is my littlest son. Anyway, I continue. And the other advantage or plus point of the coronavirus I wish to put forward that indigenous peoples in particular have brought in is that our communitarian traditions, collectivist traditions are being strengthened. 2, ecology. If you lived on my island, you would hear the birds. I invite you people, Anishji, I'll tell you, you can share how many more birds and animals are moving around in nature. And then we have the old thing of subsistence agriculture, June cultivation for the South Asians. Most of you understand the word. Shifting cultivation, Swidden cultivation. This is the time where you know that you can't always trade. You can't sell rubber and buy food because if there's no transportation, you can't trade with Mars. So if we go for encourage more food production, and then there's the whole question of occupation. Somebody mentioned about the garments, about the workers of Nepal, Nepali origin, having to come back from the Middle East. We in the Hill Tracts have more than 50,000 indigenous persons, mostly women and girls, working in ready-made garment factories in Chittagong and Taka. We think that more than half of them have come back to the region. One of it, have they brought Karuna? They may have. Most of them are unemployed. Most of them are unemployed. And so we are thinking of trades and professions. So it's a question of food aid. It's a question of exclusion. It's a question of data gathering. And I don't know, Paulo is listening, indigenous navigator thing of AIPP. It would be very, I think, helpful here. And then it's the whole question of, now I come back to the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and Human Rights. The UN Declaration is nothing but a restatement of human rights from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in a context-appropriate way, where for historical reason of exclusion from state formation, from governance, from political decision-making, land ownership, economics, etc., indigenous peoples are poorer than the rest of the world. But now, thanks to the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, if you understand it correctly, it means if you think, what about food security? Then you have to find a way whereby the indigenous community who is furthest away from the market needs 10 hours of walking distance to go to the market to buy rice, means that rice per kilo is at least 20 cents, 30 cents more than what you get in Taka. I'm talking about Bangladesh, say Kathmandu to a remote region in Nepal. So these are the challenges we have to understand and explain to the government. That's where SDG 17 comes in, that partnerships between government, NGOs, market, indigenous communities has to be solid. So we respect what the government is doing, but we know government will leave gaps. One, they do not understand indigenous peoples. I think my video is paused. I don't know why. But as long as you can hear me, please say yes.
Yes, we can hear you. If you could wrap up in a minute, that would be great.
I will wrap up, ma'am. And so partnerships, we need government with the best of will. There is corruption within the government. There is corruption within even indigenous leaders. So all the rice our Honorable Sheikh Hasina is sending is not reaching. I am listing all those villages who have been absolutely left out from getting rice. Then we have the whole thing of SDG 16 on institutions, SDG 15 on life on land, obviously SDG 3 on good health and well-being. That is where Rangamati, we don't have a machine. When my 300 yards away, my cousin's daughter-in-law got afflicted. After she got afflicted, it took them more than 48 hours to test the rest of the family. We don't have a testing machine. It's in Dhaka. It takes more than a week. So if government can't remember that these are the disadvantages suffered by remote communities and by indigenous communities, then we will be left out, and we will be left out from the good things that government is doing. And then the coronavirus is going to afflict us. I will just end with one more thing. We need support. We need support. IFAD and others are thinking, the special rapporteur is doing something. We need support to buy suits. I live in a community of 4,000 people. If I don't get a suit, I order 2 suits already, so that I can go and look at my community people. But we need suits for the undertakers, people who are going to bury and cremate people, the volunteers who are trying to enforce the lockdown and so forth. Okay, I'll end with that. Thank you very much. Ju, namaskar, namaste, adab, salam.
Thank you so much. That was quite insightful to understand how the indigenous community in your area has been dealing with the crisis and how they're facing the difficulties in these times. If you let me, I would like to take last 2 questions that we had waiting. I'll open it up to the panel, and then we can have the closing. Is that fine? Okay. So 2 questions, and it's open to the panel. I would request that you limit your intervention to 30 seconds to 1 minute at the tops, so that we can, we're already exceeding time, but we'll just try and wrap up as soon as possible.
It's 5 o'clock.
Sorry, that's my laptop. Okay, the first one is, I'm a businesswoman from Goa, India. Goa being a tourism economy, people like me with an even bigger scale businesses are facing losses. Migrants are in huge numbers in Goa, and they too are in unimaginable pressure. Keeping that along with the severity of the crisis in mind, how and when do you think businesses in tourism-centric economies can responsibly start? And the second one is, how would a regional partnership be effective in addressing COVID-19 among youth who are also affected by this new normal? It's open to the panel for answers. Yes, Mr. Mintz.
Regarding the first question, which concerns with the tourism, I think this is the worst hit sector right now. And it's really early to estimate when these things would normalize. Yesterday, I had a con call with a friend in Germany, Professor Peterson, and he said that the people are allowed to go outside, but they have like a very high level sense of understanding about maintaining distances and what to do and what not to do. A country which is very populous in terms of like India or Nepal or Bangladesh, this kind of, and the literacy level is not up to that mark, and there are other issues where the people would be not kept under control. So I think the tourism, if you're asking me when things are going to be normal, I don't think any of the panelists will be able to tell you things are going to be normal very soon. It may take a year, it may take 6 months, but yes, tourism is certain kind of sector where, you know, there is flock of people coming in and out. Until people come in, there is no business. So I think, especially for tourism, it's going to take time. That's it. And Hita, can you please repeat the second question?
Sure. The second question is, how would regional partnerships be effective in addressing COVID-19 among the youth who are also affected by this new normal?
Come again, what partnership?
Regional partnerships during COVID-19 to help youth who are affected by this new normal.
Sure, there are a lot more of dimensions when you speak about youth and how they are affected. I think it would take another session if we start speaking on this. If you're speaking about an education sector, countries which are developing or underdeveloped to take online classes and the way of interaction, it's very novel. It's very new to them. Adjusting to the teachers' lectures. Even the teachers are not that techno-savvy that they are capable of doing it. The internet speed, there are majority factors. If you take at the psychological level, since I was also appointed as a counselor to advise youth or students under stress, I never received a call saying that, yes, I'm in lockdown in South and I want to commit something or I want to do something outrageous. This never happened as far as my university was concerned. So if the person who is listening to me and who has raised this question, if he can clarify which sector he wants to specify, I think I'd be in a better position to answer it.
Thank you, sir. And do any of the other panelists want to jump on and add something to any of these questions? Well, if not, just keeping time in mind, I'm going to rush through. And Sonica, it's over to you for the closing remarks now. Sonica? I don't see her here. Yes, or Krishna, do one of you want to jump in at this time?
Sonica, we can hear you, but your audio is not here. Can you please check your audio? It's crossed over right now. Sonica, if you are hearing me, please unmute.
There's a cross sign next to her audio. I don't know what that means. Yes. Can you try now, Sonica?
Hello?
Perfect. Thank you.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, hello, namaste, and warm greetings to everyone. We have come towards the end of today's session, and with the valuable words from the intellectual speakers and the enthusiastic participation of youths from all around the world, I believe that the webinar has been a successful one and also fruitful one for every one of us. So while the entire world is fighting against the negative impacts of COVID-19, it is equally essential that we have a productive outlook towards the socio-economic as well as the environmental abnormalities as well as the opportunities that it brings about. So therefore, on the behalf of the organizing committee of Youth for Environment, Education and Development Foundation, YFE Foundation, and from my personal side as well, I would like to extend my gratitude towards all the speakers of today's session for their valuable words and their valuable time. Also, I would like to thank the moderator of today's program, Ms. Hita Lakhani, for her wonderful moderation. And last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants, each and every one of us, for our time and for making this program a huge one. So I have to say that I entirely agree with Dr. Christian Hobner on his remarks on the resilience of renewable energy and at this time of crisis. So similarly, as Dr. Nishalnath Pandey mentioned, it is very important that the cooperation among the government, public bodies and NGOs should be made to fight against the pandemic situation. And also, the point raised by Dr. Abhay Sagar Means regarding the infodemic and ethnic violence is very critical in the present context and can't be overlooked. Likewise, at last but not the least, Mr. Raja Devasis Roy shared some inspiring facts about the indigenous efforts and the opportunities that are being brought by the pandemic. It was really great listening to you, sir. So we would be giving continuity to this series of webinars, and we'll soon have the third installment of the webinar. And we hope that we receive the same kind of positive energy, same kind of enthusiasm, and same support from every one of you in the coming days as well. And I would have to say that we owe you an apology for some technical issues that occurred today in the beginning of the program. We would make sure that it will not happen again. So with this, I would like to conclude my remarks and hand over the session to the moderator once again. It's me, Sonica from Whitefield. Thank you very much. Have a nice time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonica. And I think, as rightly mentioned, the future is green. I think this crisis has, while it has come with a lot of setbacks, it has also given us time to reflect and think about how we have been dealing with our environment, and also with our colleagues, with our friends, and how we've become so busy in our day-to-day life that we'd actually lost the humane touch with each other and also with our natural surroundings. I think what we do need to realize and take away from this session is that while we do need to move towards renewable, we need to move towards a greener future where industry is not termed as polluting, where business is not termed as bad, and where young people are taking the lead together with indigenous communities, because clearly indigenous communities know how to live in harmony with nature, and we need to learn that from them faster than we think. So thank you so much for an amazing panel. And thank you to the audience. You've been great. Your questions have been amazing. And thank you so much for this interactive session. I apologize for all the technical issues that happened at the beginning, but thank you for bearing with us and staying with us right until the end. And thank you, YFEED team. You've been great. Namaste
Thank you.
and goodbye.
Namaste.